Welcome back to another episode of the What We're Watching podcast. I'm Megan.
And I'm Jenny, and today we're talking about Pride and Prejudice.
Another fall classic.
Such a fall classic. And this one, Megan, I think we've been requested it so many times.
So many times. This is like my mom's favorite movie. She has talked about us doing this episode since we started the podcast. So shout out, Mom.
And so has mine. And honestly, I think our two moms are the only people who've requested it. But they've requested it a lot.
Yes, I think that's true. But I will say, I saw so many people on social media watching this movie this fall.
Oh, good.
So it must be one of those for everybody.
You know what? This movie never struck me as a fall movie until we rewatched it. And then I was like, wow, look at the fall leaves. This is perfect for fall.
There's a lot of fall leaves. All the outdoor scenes I feel like are very like gold and like that just like autumn sunsetty time. A lot of them are. So yeah, it definitely gives fall vibes. Would recommend watching it this time of year. Quick reminder, if you're enjoying the pod, to leave us a review wherever you're listening and to follow us on social media at What We're Watching Pod.
Thank you. We really appreciate connecting with you guys. It's so fun.
So the logline for Pride and Prejudice, and we should say actually, just up top, this is the 2005 movie Pride and Prejudice that stars Keira Knightley. Okay?
Yes. This is what I think of when I think of Pride and Prejudice.
Me
Do
too.
you?
Yes,
Okay.
me too. But I know that a lot of people prefer the series, the BBC series, including, I think, your mom. Isn't that her favorite version of Pride and Prejudice?
Is it? I don't know. Well, I think my mom said, because I told her that we were doing this episode, she said that she fell in love with Pride and Prejudice because of this movie, but it's very different from the book. And then the series she watched afterwards, and that really sticks to the book. From what I was finding online, I think a lot of people agree with this. Like, the 2005 Pride and Prejudice movie is their gateway
into Pride and Prejudice land.
Exactly.
Okay.
This one makes it like modern and bite-sized for us.
It's true. The couple of friends and my family members that I told that we were doing this episode all asked me whether we were doing the series or the movie, because I think you're right. They like got into it and then they've seen both. So I feel like a lot of people that are really into this movie have seen both. So if that's you guys, let us know if you also want us to do an episode on the series.
I didn't even know that the series was a thing, to be honest. I only knew of this movie, and I grew up watching this movie. I've seen it hundreds of times.
Really?
Yes, but I don't know if I ever watched it beginning to end, or if I did, it was, maybe at an age where I couldn't fully comprehend it. So definitely picked out some nuggets that I didn't remember from watching it as a kid, but my mom had this movie on all the time, for sure.
Yeah, this is really my mom and my sister Hannah's movie that they watch together, probably annually. And I never hang around. I'm like, I'm going to bed.
See ya.
Bye, this is your thing. But I enjoyed it.
I did too. I'm actually really glad that we're covering it because I don't think I had the same appreciation for this movie as other people do. And I think that's why it was like on the bottom of my list to get to. I was like, oh, okay, I'll watch that again.
Like, eventually it will be on the pod. It just took a year, almost a year and a half.
But to be honest, really thoroughly enjoyed it. And I would watch this every year. And this is a movie that once you've seen it recently, you can just turn it on, walk away, come back, feel good vibes.
Definitely. So the logline is, sparks fly when spirited Elizabeth Bennet meets single, rich, and proud Mr. Darcy. But Mr. Darcy reluctantly finds himself falling in love with a woman beneath his class. Can each overcome their own pride and prejudice?
I see what they did there. Just to piggyback on us saying that this is such a fall movie, it did come out in November of 2005.
Okay, there you have it.
Which was a long time ago now.
Almost 20 years.
It's going to have its anniversary next year.
Wow, we should have saved it. Maybe we can do this. Oh, no. I was going to say, maybe we can do the series next year to celebrate, but it's the anniversary of this movie.
So like we said, this movie, well, I think we said it, but I also think it's common knowledge. This movie is based on Jane Austen's novel of the same name from 1813. And the screenwriter, Deborah Mogak, I'm not sure exactly if that's how you say her last name, initially tried to make the script as faithful to the novel as possible. And she wrote from Elizabeth's perspective and kept a lot of the original dialogue from the book. But then the director, Joe Wright, encouraged her to deviate from the text, including changing the dynamics within the Bennet family. I think he advocated for them talking over each other more, because in the book, they waited for each other to finish speaking. And he was like, in a family full of girls, even in the 1800s, I'm sure it wasn't like that. I'm sure they were all just speaking over each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that change, actually. I think it's great.
Yeah. It was giving Little Women.
Which I haven't seen or read either.
No, I have not seen the Greta Gerwig's Little Women either.
We need
I've
to.
seen the play a bunch and I've read the play, but just the vibe of like this family in this era, I don't even know if it's exactly the same era, but it was giving me the same vibes of just like chaotic, fun family of girls that all have different personalities. So I think they nailed that.
Yeah, I love that. And then I think another interesting thing is they also made the time period a little bit earlier than the book.
Interesting.
Or at least than the TV series, because I think the TV series is based in like 1813 or something like that. And this is even before that.
I have no concept of time that old.
I don't either.
Like I was trying to pinpoint where this would fall in comparison to Bridgerton, and I guess this would be after. No, this actually might be a similar time.
I count Bridgerton as an alternate universe, and maybe it's because of the modern music that plays.
Yeah.
But I'm like, this is an alternate universe. It doesn't have a time period. It's modern.
It kind of is. It kind of is, yes. But I guess as somebody that is not a period piece person, like I don't watch a lot of period shows or movies like a lot of people I know that love this movie do. So for me, I have watched the most Bridgerton of any period anything. And so I was trying to figure out, like, is this the same thing? Because they have the same dynamics of, like, the fathers arranging the marriages and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, just interesting.
Yeah. I know that some of you are into period dramas. And I also know that some of you are really into fashion and, like, historical fashion. And I think that is something where you can really determine the time period is based on what they're wearing.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
We'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about the costume designer, but yeah, I'd be curious to know from your point of view, listeners, if you know more than we do about the 1800s.
Yeah, if you could come up with a timeline and put Bridgerton, Queen Charlotte, and this on the timeline and Little Women and send that our way, that would be lovely.
Maybe this is why we didn't pick up on this movie originally, because I honestly even have a hard time understanding their dialogue. I have to like pause and think about what they said and be like, okay, what did they say exactly? I need a spark notes for these kind of movies.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought this was a super fun fact. Emma Thompson is said to have helped develop the script, but she's uncredited. She wrote and starred in the other Jane Austen adaptation, Sense and Sensibility. And she's also Professor Trelawney in Harry Potter. That's how I know her.
Yes, of course.
I thought this was really cute, too. She and Keira Knightley were in Love Actually together. And she was apparently Keira's childhood idol.
Oh, that makes me hope that it's true that she did work on this script and they were connected in that way somehow.
Yeah, a bunch of fun connections here. And this movie came after the very successful series that we were talking about, starring Colin Firth and Jennifer L. And that show came out 10 years prior to this, so in 1995.
Got it.
The costume designer was Jacqueline Duran, and the costumes and hairstyles were designed to appeal to modern audiences and also to distinguish them from the series. So I don't think they were trying to play for accuracy here. I think they were just like, what hairstyles and outfits would modern audiences respond well to?
Okay, interesting. Because that is what threw me off, because I was like, they're acting a lot like Bridgerton, and they are not, the vibes are not giving Bridgerton. But I assumed that they were more realistic, because Bridgerton is very like the pastels and the like crazy hair and the fun makeup and stuff to do exactly what they're saying they were doing to appeal to modern audiences. So that's fun. Everybody's just doing their own take on the like period style.
Yeah. Okay, my guess is that this is pre-Bridgerton. That's my timeline guess.
Okay.
We'll see. To differentiate the Bennet sisters, Duran viewed Elizabeth as the tomboy, and she put her in earthy colors because of her love of the countryside, which definitely came across. Like, she definitely had these earthy uniform costumes the whole time.
Definitely. And they did a good job having her hair just be kind of looser always. I feel like it was definitely giving the tomboy. She doesn't really care about having the most proper image look, which was cool.
Yeah. Jacqueline said, Jane was the most refined, and yet it's still all a bit slapdash and homemade, because the Bennets have no money. One of the main things Joe Wright wanted was for the whole thing to have a provincial feel. Mary is the blue stocking, serious and practical, And then Lydia and Kitty are a bit Tweedledum and Tweedledee in a kind of teenage way. I tried to make it so that they'd be sort of mirror images. So if one's wearing a green dress, the other will wear a green jacket. So you always have a visual asymmetry between the two.
I love that. All of that came across so well.
Yeah, so interesting. I love finding out those fun facts about costumes. I feel like you found some good ones when we did Hocus Pocus last year.
I love the costume fun facts.
It's so interesting. And so much thought goes into it just to like portray a character a certain way without saying anything. It's great.
If any of you guys are costume designers, let us know. I would love to have you on the pod.
Please.
Okay, should we talk about the cast?
Yes, please.
Starting with the Keira Knightley, who plays Elizabeth Bennet, of course.
You guys know her. I don't even have to say this, but she's from Pirates of the Caribbean, Bend It Like Beckham, Love Actually, Princess of Thieves, which I completely forgot about, and maybe you have too. Do you know this one?
I don't think I ever watched that.
Okay, you say that. I don't remember the plot at all either, but look up Princess of Thieves right now. And if you're listening, look it up. It's a Disney Robin Hood adaptation.
I don't know if I watched this. Oh, some of her outfits definitely look familiar, like her in this blue dress with a bow and arrow.
I don't remember it very well, but it definitely unlocked a memory for me. And I was like, oh, I definitely saw that as a kid. And then she was also in 2 other Joe Wright movies, Atonement and Anna Karenina. Keira started acting at age 6, and her parents were both stage actors, so she came from an acting family. I love this fun fact. One of her first projects was Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Wow.
She played Natalie Portman's handmaiden and decoy, and she was cast because of her resemblance to Natalie Portman, and even their mothers couldn't tell them apart in full makeup.
Wow, I was going to ask if that was why, because they do look a lot alike.
Do you get their movies mixed up? Because I always have.
I would not be surprised if I have, for sure. I've never thought about how they look so much alike actually until right now, but they really do.
They do and they don't. Like, I can distinguish them in my head, but their movies kind of mix for me a bit. Anyway, I thought that was so funny, though. Because usually you hear about celebrity doppelgangers, and it's like, oh yeah, everybody thinks this. But no, this literally is how she got her start. Is that she looked like Natalie Portman. Her breakthrough role, though, was in Bend It Like Beckham.
I love that movie.
I've never seen it.
We should do an episode on it. I think we've had a couple people request it.
Yeah, I think it's on our list. Joe Wright didn't initially picture someone as attractive as Keira Knightley to play Elizabeth, but then he cast her after realizing that she is really a tomboy and has a lively mind and a great sense of humor. So I thought that was kind of an interesting quote.
Yeah.
Keira has been a fan of Pride and Prejudice since she was 7, but she was worried to take the role because she admired Jennifer L's depiction of Elizabeth in the TV series, and she was worried that she would just copy her performance.
That would be very intimidating. For any, like, I never have thought about that, but because the series came first and it was so iconic, especially at the time that this was coming out, I'm sure, that would have been a lot. That would have felt like big shoes to fill.
We were just talking about this with Jenna Ortega and Christina Ricci playing Wednesday.
Yep.
I mean, that would be intimidating for Jenna Ortega to have to take on that iconic role and make it different and not copy her, you know?
Yeah.
That'd be hard. Keira Knightley was 20 when Pride and Prejudice came out.
Young. I mean, I guess she's supposed to be young in the movie, so that makes sense, but I definitely thought she was older than that.
Is it bad that when I watch these movies, I feel like the Keira Knightleys, the Hilary Duffs even, I feel like they're all older than me?
Yeah, oh no, same.
And maybe it's because I just see them as like these beautiful creatures that are, I don't know, Keira Knightley in this movie is so put together and cool. She has such cool girl energy. And then I'm like, there's me.
No.
I don't know what it is, but she gives older.
I think it's because you look at them the way that you viewed them when you were first introduced to them, probably. Or that's how I feel about Hilary Duff. Like, even seeing Hilary Duff in like the Lizzie McGuire movie, I'm like, oh, we're the same age. She's in her 20s. Or like maybe she's in college, which in my head, sometimes I'm still in college, you know?
Yeah.
And you just think that she's so cool, but really you're watching somebody like a decade younger than you.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
During Pride and Prejudice, Keira was also filming Domino, and she had to cut her hair short. So for a lot of the scenes, she's wearing a wig. And I have seen online that people hate this wig.
Oh, interesting. I didn't catch that at all.
I loved her hair in this movie. I thought it looked great.
Yeah.
But I did notice, because I had seen this fun fact beforehand, I did notice in some of the scenes that you could see her hair poking out from the wig, from the back. So that was kind of annoying.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't use a wig cap.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, confused. This is really sad, though. She says that she had a mental breakdown at 22 from press saying bad things about her acting and her looks, or for being followed by paparazzi and fans. I think she just blew up so fast and didn't know what to do with that fame and negativity so quickly. And she was actually diagnosed with PTSD from it. So she took a year off of acting and she did a lot of therapy. And she said that she came back feeling better and not caring about the views of others.
Wow. That is so sad, but also good for her for taking a break.
And I have noticed she's very private. Like, she doesn't have Instagram or anything like that.
No, yeah. She gives very traditional celebrity, almost like a Jennifer Lawrence type of just like, my personal life, not your business.
Yep. Respect.
I always imagined her like a Natalie Portman or something who's just always been famous.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm just like, oh, you were definitely a child actress, which I don't think she was, but just assuming that she has been famous forever and is used to it. But no, obviously not.
And it was just really quick. I think Bend It Like Beckham, Pride and Prejudice, and Pirates. I think those were the three things that just were back to back to back and just got her.
It makes sense, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's talk about Matthew McFayden, who plays Mr. Darcy, aka Tom Whamsgams from Succession.
I was like, who? I don't watch Succession.
It was so hard for me to take him seriously as Mr. Darcy because I know him first and foremost as Tom Whamsgams from Succession, where he is American and just like this complete idiot doofus husband who's hilarious and one of my favorite characters in the show and so unserious. So then to see him in this with this like flowy hair, I just like could not stop laughing.
This grumpy man.
Uh-huh.
Grumpy, serious man who's the romance interest.
Yeah, it's shocking.
Yeah, that's so funny. Also, if you guys have seen Deadpool and Wolverine, he is Mr. Paradox, kind of the bad guy in that movie. And I did not recognize him at all. So it was interesting. Joe Wright said that it was hard to cast Mr. Darcy because of the shadow that Colin Firth left on the character, which I could imagine.
Yeah, talk about big shoes. That would be really hard.
I haven't seen it, but Colin Firth, Mr. Darcy, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I love Colin Firth.
But then when he cast Keira, who was a big name, it allowed him to cast someone lesser known for Darcy. Matthew McFayden said that he didn't enjoy playing Darcy. I actually saw a recent interview with him where he said that he wishes he enjoyed it more and wasn't so worried at the time about being miscast. He said he didn't feel dishy enough for the role, and I had to look up what dishy meant, and it's British slang for sexually attractive.
Oh, he just didn't feel hot.
I know, it makes me sad. It reminds me of Jack Black in The Holiday and how he felt uncomfortable being that romantic interest.
Yep.
But Mr. Darcy, I mean, Matthew McFayden has made many a girl swoon because of this movie.
Many.
So he didn't need to be,
So worried about that. Oh.
sad.
That is sad. But also, like, I cannot take him seriously as a romantic lead, though, now that he's played Tom.
That's funny.
I need you to watch, like, one episode of Succession just to see the difference.
I'll do it for you.
I'll send you a clip. I mean, he is, like, the most quotable character of the entire show. Okay. So I'll find a clip and send it to you.
Okay. At least he looks different now. I mean, like,
totally.
He looks very different in this movie because he's got the dark hair and like the sideburns, and it's really dark, actually.
Yeah.
He's been married to Keely Hawes since 2004, and they met while co-starring in the British show Spooks.
I love that.
Yeah, so he actually was known for that, but he was only known in England and not really internationally.
Oh, I love that. I hope they stay together. I feel like he's gotten so famous over the last few years from Succession and then now from Deadpool and Wolverine. He's like in the Marvel-verse. So.
Yeah, they've been married for 20 years, so.
We're rooting for them, yeah.
Rooting for them, for sure.
Okay, now we have to talk about Donald Sutherland, who plays Mr. Bennett, who I was not expecting to see in this movie at all.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay, he was one of the characters that I definitely remembered from this movie because his performance was so standout. I feel like just so good. And he was such a good actor. And I am saying was because unfortunately he did pass away recently in June 2024. I was so shocked and sad. Such sad news.
Very sad.
But I didn't really know a lot about him, except for the movies that I've seen him in. He actually has 198 acting credits from his career.
Wow.
And I wasn't even looking at like producing or directing. I don't know if he's done any of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has. He's President Snow in The Hunger Games. He was also in MASH. And he was also in the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie. And in our episode on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, we talked about Joss Whedon's beef with him. If you're interested in it, go check that one out. I feel like that one is like not as nice to Donald Sutherland as we are being in this episode, but I honestly just think he took his craft very, very seriously.
Yeah, definitely. That's the vibe.
And he was good at it.
He's President Snow to me.
I know. I didn't know this about him, but he was an anti-war activist who vocally opposed the Vietnam War. And he was actually on the NSA watch list in the 70s for his anti-war activities.
Wow.
Joe Wright, the director of Pride and Prejudice, said that Donald Sutherland reminded him of his father, and he felt like the actor had enough strength to handle these 6 women that he was living with, and so that's why he cast him. I think he asked Donald Sutherland to be in it.
I thought he was a great choice for this role. He did not come across as harsh and scary as I think you could have made the dad in this role, and that was very refreshing, because I think anything that I watch in this time period is always so kind of like unsettling because of just like the role of women in society. And I think that he could have been a lot more harsh, and he came off very gentle in the way that he spoke, which I thought was cool.
I love his character. He just loves his girls. And even the way he interacts with his wife is so funny.
Yeah.
I love him. Also, I thought it was interesting that Joe Wright cast him because he's Canadian. So only 2 people who are not English, I think, are in the movie. Or no, only 2 people who are Canadian and American are in the movie.
Interesting. Okay, and then we have Rosamund Pike, who plays Jane Bennett.
She's from Gone Girl, I Care a Lot, Saltburn, a bunch of other things.
I just need to say, I definitely watched Pride and Prejudice growing up, but I hadn't seen it in a very long time. And so I am watching this with Tom Wamsgans, President Snow, and this woman from I Care a Lot and Gone Girl as like 3 of the main leads with Keira Knightley. And it was so hard for me to take seriously. But it is funny because this would have been the main thing that a lot of people know these actors from, at least a lot of people our age, and or this came before all the things that I've seen everybody else in. So it's just funny.
Yeah, I was feeling the same way. I was like, oh, Rosamund Pike, Carey Mulligan, Jenna Malone, okay.
Yeah.
Crazy. Rosamund Pike's breakthrough role was as Bond girl Miranda Frost in the 2002 James Bond movie Die Another Day.
I actually didn't realize that.
Me neither. I've never seen it, though. Also, she turned down the role of Rita Skeeter in Harry Potter for this movie.
That is a devastating loss.
She would have been so great.
She would have been so good. Oh, she would have been so good. That's tragic. But she was amazing in this movie, so.
She really was. This was crazy to me. I had no idea. Her ex-boyfriend, Simon Woods, was cast as Mr. Bingley.
Wow.
Who is her love interest in the movie, if you haven't seen it in a long time.
That is funny.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
And they had so much chemistry. I felt like it was so perfect, and they let bygones be bygones, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's because it was probably real chemistry from their previous relationship.
This is crazy, though. After this movie, she got engaged to the director Joe Wright.
Whoa. Whoa.
Which to me, I don't know their age difference, but I don't really love it when people in positions of power, like he was her boss, and then they started dating after the movie. I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't love it. Although it is kind of funny to think about her ex-boyfriend being on set all the time, but she's actually dating the boss director.
And Joe Wright cast her ex-boyfriend and knew. He knew it was her ex-boyfriend, and he was just like, I'm going to cast him anyway.
Yeah, I kind of love that dynamic.
It is funny. That's kind of a rom-com in itself. But their engagement ended in 2008. And then since 2009, she's been in a relationship with a businessman named Roby Uniacki. Don't know if that's how you say it. And they live in Prague and have 2 sons who are fluent in Mandarin.
Wow, that fits for Rosamund Pike, doesn't it?
I feel like it does. And I don't think either of them were fluent in Mandarin. I think they just appreciated Chinese culture. And so they taught their kids Mandarin.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about Carey Mulligan, who plays Kitty Bennett.
You know her from The Great Gatsby, Promising Young Woman, Far from the Madding Crowd, Okay, that is a period piece that I recommend wholeheartedly.
Okay. Okay. I'll have to check it out. Far from the madding crowd.
Yes, you could not ask me what decade it's supposed to be in. I have no idea. 1700s, 1600s, 1800s, I don't know.
Same to me.
It's fun though. I like that movie. She's also in the best Doctor Who episode, which is called Blink. Anyone who is a Doctor Who fan knows this episode. It's actually the only episode of Doctor Who that I've ever seen. So I'm acting like I'm a big fan. I've only seen that episode. And this was her feature film debut. She is going to be in the second season of Beef. Did you hear this?
No.
Okay, Beef is going to be an anthology like American
It
Horror
is.
Story.
It actually is?
Yes.
Didn't we talk about this when Beef first came out? I don't know if it was on the
so.
podcast or if we just talked about it.
No, I think it was on the podcast. I don't know what
For
episode
fun.
though.
Yes, because I remember them announcing that there was gonna be a season 2, and all of the quotes before they had announced a season 2 from the creator were like, yeah, I would imagine an anthology. But then all the quotes after the season came out, because it was so popular, made it seem like they were going to continue the same story, and I was so bummed.
And I was like, how? How are they going to do that? Because it ended.
But it is going to be an anthology.
So the new actors in the second season are going to be Carey Mulligan, Kaylee Spaney, who is so popular right now. Do you know who she is?
I don't think so.
She was Priscilla in the movie Priscilla that just came out.
Okay.
She's also she was in Civil War that recently came out. And there was another, that Alien movie that just came out. Maybe it's called Alien. She's in that one too.
Okay, so she's been in a bunch of stuff.
She's been in a lot of like action stuff and then that biopic. Charles Melton, who I'm not sure I know him.
I think he
looked kind of familiar.
Oh, I know him from Riverdale.
That's why I mentioned him. Yep, he's from Riverdale. And then Oscar Isaac is also going to be in it.
Wow.
Stacked cast.
That is so exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Okay, I had no idea, but she dated Shia LaBeouf from 2009 to 2010.
Nope, I had no clue.
And I didn't even know that they co-starred in a movie together.
Mm-mm.
They were in the movie Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps.
I hope she's okay.
I hope so too. Ugh, that whole thing makes me so sad. We should probably do a deep dive on Shia LaBeouf one day.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe watch Even Stevens or something.
Yeah.
In 2012, Carey Mulligan married Marcus Mumford from Mumford & Sons. That's actually the only relationship that I know of that she's been in.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Oh, wait. Okay, this is the cutest story. You're going to love this. I actually knew this already, but they were childhood pen pals, and then they lost touch, and they reconnected.
Cute.
I know. It's so cute. And I always thought this, but I couldn't really confirm it when I was Googling it. The Mumford & Sons song, I Will Wait, I always thought was about her.
Oh,
It's like, I will wait for you.
my pen pal. Oh my God, the story makes me want to cry. Guys, ever since I've been pregnant, I'm the fastest crier. Like if somebody posted something on their Instagram story the other day that was like a graphic about losing your dog. I have never bawled my eyes out so quickly. Like 2 seconds. Somebody that I don't know, okay? Just an influencer. Anyway, it's wild.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. That's so cute.
That actually really scares me because I already cry at random stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I cry at TikToks all the time.
Buckle in.
Okay.
It is honestly concerning. But it is also nice to know the reason, to be like, I feel insane for crying about this stuff all the time. But it's hormones,
But you don't have to like attach to like, why am I crying so much? It's like, you got the reason.
Right.
You're good.
Right, exactly. Okay, now let's talk about Jenna Malone, who plays Lydia Bennett.
I didn't realize she was in Donnie Darko, which is such a cult classic. I've never seen it because I'm scared of it, but I think that's what really got her start. She's also from Sucker Punch, and what you guys probably know her most from is The Hunger Games, which I think it's funny that she was with Donald Sutherland again in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Though I don't know if they have any scenes together.
No, I don't think so. She plays Joanna, doesn't she? Is that who she plays?
She plays Joanna Mason.
I don't think they would have been together.
I don't think so either. But probably on red carpets and stuff. And that's the second Hunger Games movie, Catching Fire, for those who haven't seen it in a long time. I found out something really sad. She said that she was sexually assaulted by a coworker on the Hunger Games, and it's sometimes hard to talk about being Joanna Mason without feeling the sharpness of that moment in time for her. But she never named names or anything. She said that because of cancel culture, she didn't want to, and she felt like no justice would really be served. But yeah, it's really sad to hear.
Wow, that's really sad.
You know how I mentioned earlier that Donald Sutherland was a Canadian and that there was one American who was cast with him? That was her. And Joe Wright cast her as the only American Bennett sister because he said that she had a faultless English accent, which I agree.
High praise. And definitely, I didn't notice at all.
No. I actually didn't even think about the fact that Donald Sutherland and Jenna Malone weren't English.
No, same. Did not even occur to me.
To be honest, I don't really know when people aren't American. I don't know if that's bad to say, but like...
No, I don't think that's bad. I think most people don't.
People like Tom Holland, for instance, he always plays such a good American accent that I just don't remember, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Until I hear him talk and I'm like, oh, wait, yeah. Jenna Malone's mom became pregnant with her after a one-night stand, and she was raised by her mom and her mom's girlfriend. And she says, I had 2 moms and it was awesome.
Oh.
She says that she comes from a queer family and she actually recently came out as pansexual herself.
Oh, that's exciting.
I know. I love that for her. She has a pretty interesting upbringing. Her family struggled with money and relocated a lot, and they were even homeless at times. She said she fell in love with acting in 1995 when she took acting classes in Las Vegas, and she persuaded her mom to move to LA so she could pursue acting. But in 1999, when she was 15, she filed for legal emancipation from her mom because she said that her mom mismanaged her earnings from acting and spent $280,000 of her trust account.
Wow.
And then Jenna dropped out of high school that year as well.
Wow. That's a wild upbringing and very tumultuous and probably traumatic for her.
But she has a very interesting follow on Instagram because she is very open and vulnerable, and I think she has a Substack also.
Cool.
She just seems like somebody who, I don't know, she's very artsy and vulnerable and has a lot of interesting insights about the world because of her upbringing, so highly recommend.
Very cool. Okay, and last but not least, we have Tallulah Riley, who plays Mary Bennett.
She's from Westworld and St. Trinian's. I didn't know her at all.
Me either.
And then I found out that she dated Elon Musk starting in 2008. They married in 2010 and then divorced in 2012. And then they remarried in 2013 and divorced again in 2016.
Whoa.
Wild.
Does she have a bunch of kids? Like a bunch of his kids? Because I know he has a million kids.
I don't think so.
Wow.
I don't know if they have any kids together. They might.
Wild.
I know. She's now married to Thomas Brody Sangster, and you definitely know him if you don't know his name. He's from The Maze Runner, The Queen's Gambit, Nanny McPhee. He's the main little boy, and he's Ferb from Phineas and Ferb.
Wow.
So she went from Elon Musk to Ferb.
To Ferb. I love that.
Don't love this, though. When Elon Musk was acquiring Twitter in 2022, texts were released where she told him, please do something to fight wokeism. I will do anything to help.
Ugh. Hate that. Hate to see that.
It's not often that all I find are red flags from somebody, but that's all I found.
Damn.
Sucks.
You hate to see it. Was married to Elon Musk, though, which is red flag number 1.
That's what I'm saying.
So I guess unsurprising.
The tumultuous nature of their relationship wasn't even the red flag, to be honest.
Just the fact that it was with him to begin with.
Yep.
Well, on that note, should we get into the movie recap?
Let's do it.
We open on a field in the 18th century, and Elizabeth Bennet, played by Keira Knightley, walks while reading a book. She walks home to Longbourn, where her sister Mary plays the Pride and Prejudice song. And Elizabeth's sisters are very excited when they overhear their parents talking about how Mr. Bingley is moving nearby into Netherfield Hall and is single. These girls go feral every time they hear that there's a single man in town. It's
so true.
So funny. Mr. Bennet says that he's already met Mr. Bingley and will consent to any of his girls marrying him. The girls find out that Mr. Bingley is going to tomorrow's ball, and Elizabeth's sisters all fight and beg each other to borrow clothes for it, while Elizabeth is just amused by this chaos, by the boy craziness.
I love her.
She does not participate in the boy craziness.
The next day at the ball, Elizabeth tells her sister Jane that all men are humorless poppycocks in her experience. Which honestly, I kind of want to steal for future because that's a sleigh.
That is a sleigh.
Jane says one of these days someone will catch her eye and then she'll have to watch her tongue.
Then Mr. Bingley, which I will say, it is funny that they refer to all the men as Mr. something, like even their dad is referred to by their mom as Mr. Bennet.
Do we know their first names at all?
I have no idea.
No, I don't think we do.
It's kind of cute, actually, but it is also weird.
Yeah.
Mr. Bingley and his sister Caroline, who's played by Kelly Riley, who is from Yellowstone. She plays Beth in Yellowstone. So I was also shocked to see her. So many people were in this. Anyway, Mr. Bingley, his sister Caroline, and his friend, Mr. Darcy, come into the ball. And when Elizabeth sees them, she asks about the one with the quizzical brow, Mr. Darcy. Mrs. Bennet, played by Brenda Blythen, takes her girls to meet Mr. Bingley, and he and Jane are immediately taken with each other. It's very cute. And Elizabeth is immediately uninterested in talking to Bingley when he says he's not a big reader. So that's very important to her.
Love it.
And then Jane and Bingley dance with each other, and Elizabeth asks, "Do you dance, Mr. Darcy?" And he says, "Not if I can help it." So she just walks away from him.
Later, she overhears Darcy telling Bingley that Elizabeth is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt him. And obviously, she's put off even more by him now. So she joins everyone in dancing, and Mr. Darcy keeps watching her. And in a conversation later about whether or not poetry drives affection, Mr. Darcy says, "So what do you recommend to encourage affection?" And Elizabeth says, "Dancing, even if one's partner is barely tolerable." So then he realizes that she heard him talking about her.
Good.
So good. But that was one of those parts where I had to rewind it a couple times because I was like, okay, something juicy's happening here, but I'm not following.
The next morning, Jane gets an invitation from Bingley's sister Caroline inviting her to dinner, but her brother will be dining out. Then Mrs. Bennet makes Jane go on horseback instead of taking the carriage, and it starts pouring rain, and we find out that this was Mrs. Bennet's plan, so Jane would have to stay the night at the Bingleys. And Mr. Bennet says, "Good God, woman, your skills in the art of matchmaking are positively occult."
I love that.
Yeah.
Jane catches a cold from horseback riding in the rain and has to stay at Bingley's to recuperate, just like her mom planned. And her dad jokingly says, "If Jane does die, it'll be a comfort to know it was in pursuit of Mr. Bingley at Netherfield."
Dark joke.
I also like that her mom is like, she won't die, it's just a cold.
Yeah.
Elizabeth goes to Netherfield to see Jane immediately, and Bingley's sister Caroline and Mr. Darcy are there. Darcy immediately stands up and bows. I just assumed that was the thing that they had to do. I don't know.
I think so.
Meanwhile, Caroline is kind of rude right off the bat and is like, "Did you walk here?" And Elizabeth is like, "Yeah, I did."
You can really tell that the Bennets are much lower class than this family. I think that's what they're trying to show.
Exactly. Still, Mr. Darcy seems affected by Elizabeth being there, like he wasn't expecting her, and there's something about her that we're seeing in his eyes and his facial expression that he's like a little, I don't know what the word is, like...
I don't know. Confused, struck.
Bothered?
Yeah, bothered.
I don't know.
Uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable, that's the word I was thinking of. He's uncomfy. When Elizabeth goes upstairs to see Jane, Mr. Bingley takes care of her while she's sick and is just so happy that she's there, and we just see that he's a really nice man.
Later, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy have this banter back and forth, and he says not half a dozen women would satisfy his notion of an accomplished woman. And Elizabeth says, "I am no longer surprised at you knowing only 6 accomplished women, Mr. Darcy. I rather wonder at your knowing any." And she says she never saw such a woman that is, quote, as accomplished at all the things he's describing, but she would be a fearsome sight to behold. Basically, he's listing off a ton of really, like...
She needs to be able to play piano and read and do all of these things. So, I don't know.
Be knowledgeable about different cultures and blah, blah, blah. It's just like a very long laundry list of things that he would want in a woman. So she's making fun of him for it, basically.
And I love her for that.
Mm-hmm. All of the Bennet girls come to visit Netherfield and ask if it's true that Mr. Bingley is going to hold a ball, which wasn't true, but them saying this gets him to say that he will host a ball, and he says that he will when Jane recovers.
When Jane recovers, the Bennets all leave Netherfield. Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy have this cold goodbye, where she says, "Mr. Darcy," and he says, "Miss Elizabeth," but then he helps her into the carriage, and she's taken aback that he, touched her hand. And then afterwards, we see that he flexes his hand after it's touched hers. And when I tell you, Megan, that the internet is obsessed with this moment.
Really? The hand flex?
Yes, they're obsessed with the hand flex. And I always noticed it, but I didn't think much about it. And actually, I don't even think it was planned in the script or anything.
No, I bet it wasn't.
I think they were just zooming in on his hand, and it was doing that naturally. But the most popular review of this movie on Letterboxd is the hand flex, the hand flex, the hand flex times 28. It has 25,000 likes.
That's amazing.
And when I was scrolling through the reviews, at least 5 of them on the first page were about the hand flex.
Okay, so what is the moment in, what is the movie where I fell in love with Heath Ledger?
Oh, when he smiles, or with the Bunsen burner?
Yes, the Bunsen burner.
Or the smile with the toothpick.
No, the Bunsen burner. This is is it the Bunsen burner or a lighter?
Bunsen burner. You're thinking of Jennifer's Body.
Yes, I'm thinking of the Tumblr GIF that was like viral from that movie because everyone was just like, something about what he's doing here I can't get over. So this is that from Pride and Prejudice is what I'm hearing.
Completely, yes.
Okay.
But anyway, if you were affected by the hand flex, if you've been personally victimized by Mr. Darcy's hand flex, let us know.
You're not alone, clearly. Mr. Bennet's cousin, Mr. Collins, comes to visit the Bennets for dinner. And since he's the closest male relative, since they have all daughters, Mr. Collins will actually inherit all of Longbourn when Mr. Bennet passes. So he'll get the whole family estate, which is why all of the girls are kind of in a rush to get married. And their parents are very supportive of that, which I guess makes sense because if Mr. Bennet, their dad, passes away, then they'll be left with nothing. So dinner is very awkward because it's this man who's going to get their estate next coming to visit them. And Mr. Collins is also very cocky and nobody really likes him. And Elizabeth and her dad covertly make fun of him, but he doesn't notice, which is cute.
Mm-hmm.
After dinner, Mr. Collins privately tells Mrs. Bennet that he wants to propose to Jane, but Mrs. Bennet says that she'll actually be engaged soon because of everything happening with Mr. Bingley. So she suggests Elizabeth, and Collins says that she's an agreeable alternative. This is their cousin.
Yeah.
I was just doing double takes this entire time, just like, I didn't think we were going in that direction, but okay.
That was normal.
Yeah.
I actually don't think this is the first cousin relationship or the last in this movie, because I think we get to one later too. Another day, the Bennet sisters meet the handsome and charming Lieutenant Wickham, and they all run into Mr. Bingley and Darcy, and there's this weird, tense moment between Wickham and Mr. Darcy, and then Darcy rides away on his horse. Wickham tells Elizabeth that his father worked for the Darcy family, and he and Mr. Darcy were best friends growing up. Darcy's father loved Wickham like a son, and wished for Wickham to have the rectory and his estate, which is like the church building, I think. But Mr. Darcy denied Wickham his rightful inheritance, and Wickham said that Darcy's father loved him more, and Darcy was jealous, and now Wickham is a lowly foot soldier.
At the Netherfield ball, Elizabeth is hoping to find Mr. Wickham, but he's been called into town on business. But mostly he just didn't want to be at the ball with Mr. Darcy. So Mr. Collins asks Elizabeth to dance, and she dances with him, but is obviously not into it.
Afterwards, Darcy asks Elizabeth to have the next dance, which is interesting because he doesn't dance. And she says yes, and then she laughs with her friend Charlotte that it'd be inconvenient if she finds him amiable, because she's sworn to loathe him for all eternity, which I thought was funny. They dance together, and they banter like always, and they banter about Mr. Wickham, but Darcy doesn't really give her any more information to go off of, so she still thinks that she can't figure out why he wronged Wickham. While they dance, they forget about everyone else in the room, and it looks like just the two of them are there, and then they pop back and everybody's back at the ball. It's a very nice scene.
Mm-hmm. Caroline Bingley is a snob all night, and she's just acting like everyone at the ball is beneath her because they're all lower class. And she tells Mr. Bingley that he can't be serious about Jane.
The next morning, Collins proposes to Elizabeth, and she rejects him. Her mother is upset because she wants Lizzie to inherit the house with Mr. Collins and save all of her sisters. But Mr. Bennet supports Lizzie's decision. He says, "Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do." I also love that her mom's chasing her out of the house.
Yeah.
Running after her. And I think there are geese following too. It is kind of a humorous scene.
Yeah. I also love that Mr. Bennet's favorite is clearly Elizabeth. I think
Definitely.
He sees a lot of himself in her for whatever reason. And so he just actually wants what's best for her instead of just what's going to save the money in the family,
Yeah.
So Jane gets a letter from Bingley and is clearly upset. And then we see the Bingleys and Mr. Darcy unexpectedly leaving Netherfield to go back to London to see Mr. Darcy's sister. Elizabeth tells Jane that Caroline is taking Mr. Bingley off to persuade him to marry someone else. And Elizabeth urges Jane to visit their aunt and uncle, the Gardiners, who live in London, hoping that she reconnects with Bingley.
Elizabeth's best friend, Charlotte, tells Lizzie that she's engaged to Mr. Collins, and Lizzie is shocked. Charlotte is 27, she has no money, no prospects other than Mr. Collins, and is afraid of becoming a spinster. So she tells her not to dare judging her for wanting the security. I also found another letterboxd comment that I had to pop in here. I don't know why they were so good for Pride and Prejudice. But this is my habit. When I finish a movie, I go look at the letterboxd reviews because they're usually just memes.
Didn't you say you love Iowa Debris' letterboxd reviews?
Yes, obsessed. And she also has a really funny review for this movie.
Oh,
so
really?
Highly
Good.
recommend. But I didn't want to repeat it on the podcast because it wasn't entirely comfy to say out loud.
Okay. We'll all have to go look it up.
But this person said, I relate to Charlotte Lucas because I too have no money, no prospects, and am a burden to my parents. And I just thought that was hilarious.
Then we jump to months later when Elizabeth visits Charlotte and Mr. Collins, who live next to Lady Catherine de Bourgh's estate in Kent. And Charlotte is happy to live in her big new house. I think she makes a comment of just like, I love having a home that's mine to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
And Lady Catherine invites them over, and unexpectedly, Mr. Darcy is there. He is Lady Catherine's nephew and is visiting his cousin, Colonel Fitzwilliam.
Lady Catherine makes Elizabeth play piano even though she tries to decline multiple times because she's bad at it. And Elizabeth tells Fitzwilliam that Darcy was dreadful and wouldn't dance with anyone at the ball when she first met him. When Fitzwilliam leaves, Darcy says he doesn't have the talent of conversing easily with people he's never met before, which honestly, same, I understand. And Elizabeth tells him that he should take his aunt's advice and practice.
And so later he does practice. He comes into the Collins' house when Elizabeth is alone and tries to make small talk with her, but then immediately gets awkward and says, "Good day, Miss Elizabeth. It's been a pleasure." Charlotte comes home and asks what she's done to Mr. Darcy, and Elizabeth says, "I have no idea."
Unaware that Jane is Elizabeth's sister, Darcy's cousin Fitzwilliam mentions at church to Elizabeth that Darcy recently untangled Bingley from an imprudent marriage with an unsuitable family.
Elizabeth is understandably distraught hearing this, and she runs out of the church in a storm, and Darcy follows her and then declares that he came to Lady Catherine's to see her. And despite his better judgment, his family's expectation, and her inferior rank and family, he's willing to put them all aside and ask her to end his agony. And he tells her he loves her most ardently and then proposes to her. This is the iconic scene that I remember because it's also raining. So if you guys remember that scene, that's this. Elizabeth is offended and angry because he just listed all the reasons that he shouldn't like her. And so she refuses him and brings up her sister. And he defends separating Jane and Bingley, believing that Jane was indifferent to his friend, not realizing that Jane was just shy. And he criticizes the other Bennets' occasional societal impropriety.
Elizabeth asks him what excuse he has for Mr. Wickham. She says, "From the first moment I met you, your arrogance and conceit, your selfish disdain for the feelings of others, made me realize you were the last man in the world I could ever be prevailed upon to marry." It looks like they're almost about to, angry kiss here because their faces are really close to each other. They're very passionate. And he says, "Forgive me, madam, for taking so much of your time." And he leaves.
I totally thought they were going to kiss here. I don't know why I thought I remembered that as part of this scene in the rain.
I think I did too.
But no. So Elizabeth is obviously very upset. And Darcy later delivers Elizabeth a letter describing Wickham's true character. It turns out that Wickham did receive the rectory that Darcy's father left for him, but he gambled it away within weeks. And then he demanded more money, which Darcy refused. And then Wickham attempted to elope with Darcy's 15-year-old sister, Georgiana, so that he could gain her fortune, and then disappeared when he realized he wouldn't get a penny. So Wickham is bad.
Elizabeth returns home, and so does Jane. Jane says that she's over Mr. Bingley, but it's obvious that she's not. Elizabeth tells her that she saw Mr. Darcy, but she lies and says that he didn't mention Bingley. Elizabeth accompanies her aunt and uncle, the Gardiners, on a trip to the Peak District, and she reluctantly tours Pemberley, which is the Grand Darcy estate. They say Mr. Darcy won't even be there. That's kind of how they convince her to go. And she gets lost staring at this bust statue of Mr. Darcy. And when the others ask if she thinks he's handsome, she says, "Yes, I dare say he is."
And then, of course, the actual Mr. Darcy is there, even though they told her he wouldn't be. And Elizabeth sees the way he interacts with his little sister Georgiana and spins her around. It's very cute. And when he notices her watching, she runs outside and he follows her. He invites her and the Gardiners to dinner the next night. And we can tell that Darcy has softened a lot since they last spoke, and his manners definitely impressed the Gardiners. Georgiana says her brother told her so many things about Elizabeth that she feels like she's friends with her already. And then Elizabeth and Darcy have much flirtier banter now. It has a little bit less of an edge.
That night, Lizzie gets an urgent letter from Jane saying that Lydia has run off with Wickham, which during that time, that was so scandalous and would ruin Lydia's chances of marrying someone else and having a secure future, because women just didn't have anything except for whatever they married into. Darcy and Elizabeth both blame themselves for not exposing Wickham earlier. Darcy leaves abruptly, and Elizabeth returns home. Her mother is afraid that Lydia's disgrace will ruin her other daughter's chances of good marriages, and her mom is like depressed in bed over it.
Then their father comes back from unsuccessfully trying to find Lydia to a letter that says Wickham and Lydia will marry if Mr. Bennet sends Wickham £100 a year. Mrs. Bennet is just thrilled that Lydia is going to be married at 15 because this is seen as a huge success.
She like jumps out of bed.
Yeah. She's the youngest daughter, I believe, too.
Is she?
I think so. I think they make a comment about her being the youngest. Lydia and Wickham come back to Longbourn for a short visit as newlyweds, and Lydia lets it slip to Elizabeth that it was Darcy who found them and paid for their wedding and Wickham's military commission.
Which I think kind of makes sense because £100 a year, even in that time, wasn't very much. Yeah. And I think Mr. Bennet makes a comment about that too.
Mm-hmm. And so does Elizabeth. I think Elizabeth knows immediately something else is up, like someone else has contributed here, or somebody's made some kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Mr. Darcy.
Bingley and Darcy return to Netherfield and visit Longbourn. Darcy says that he's returning to town tomorrow, and Lizzie is disappointed. They're basically there for just a few minutes to say hi, and then they leave. It's very awkward. But later we see Bingley pacing outside by the lake with Mr. Darcy, and he's practicing what he actually wanted to say. Then back at the Bennet house, Jane apologizes that Darcy was there, and Elizabeth tells her not to apologize. She says that she's been so blind. But before she can explain, Bingley and Darcy return to the house, Bingley with his new practiced courage, and Bingley apologizes to Jane, proposes to her, and she says 1,000 times yes.
It's very cute. Late that night, Lady Catherine, who again is Mr. Darcy's aunt, who lives near Mr. Collins and Charlotte, she comes to see Elizabeth and demands that she never become engaged to Mr. Darcy because she claims Darcy has been engaged to marry Lady Catherine's daughter since their infancy. This is obviously news to Elizabeth, and Lady Charlotte insults Elizabeth's family, especially Lydia's marriage, and Elizabeth asks her to leave immediately. This was nice. I was proud that Elizabeth had a backbone in this moment.
In all of the moments, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth can't sleep that night and goes for an early morning walk. Through the fog, Mr. Darcy dramatically appears with piano music playing in the background. Everybody knows this scene. My mom brought this scene up to me yesterday when we were talking about it. He apologizes to her for his aunt's behavior. Elizabeth says that she's the one who should be making amends for all he's done for her family. He says surely she must know that it was all for her. He says his affections and wishes haven't changed, but if she still feels how she felt about him last April, one word from her would silence him forever. He says, if, however, your feelings have changed, I would have to tell you, you have bewitched me body and soul, and I love you. I never wish to be parted from you from this day on. She grabs his hand and kisses it, and they put their foreheads together as the morning sun comes up between them.
This was very sweet. I kind of loved that they didn't kiss in this moment,
but
it was very intimate.
I don't think they were allowed to. I could
that
be
tracks.
So wrong.
If this is in Bridgerton time, no kissing. They definitely kiss in Bridgerton, but it is definitely clear that's not allowed. So
they more than kiss in Bridgerton.
They definitely do more than kiss. Correct. Then we cut to Elizabeth pacing in front of her father's study, and then Mr. Darcy comes out. She goes in, and her father is confused because he thought that she hated Darcy, and she tells her father that she loves him and was entirely wrong about him. She tells him what Darcy has done for their family, and Mr. Bennet wants to pay him back, but Elizabeth says that he wouldn't even want it. She tells him that she and Darcy are similar because they're both so stubborn, and Mr. Bennet starts laughing and crying, realizing that she really does love him, and you can tell he's overjoyed at this, and he says, I cannot believe that anyone can deserve you, but it seems I am overruled, so I heartily give my consent. And she hugs him, and he says that he couldn't have parted with her for anyone less worthy. And then she runs off to tell Darcy, and Mr. Bennet just laughs to himself in his study.
I also love that when Darcy came to see him, he didn't say yes to him. He was like, I need to talk to Elizabeth first.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally. Yeah, you're totally right. I didn't even think about that, but you're totally right.
He's the best. Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth sit outside at his estate, and we can tell some time has passed now. And she tells him that he can call her Lizzie for every day, my Pearl for Sundays, and Goddess Divine on special occasions. He says, What shall I call you when I'm cross? Mrs. Darcy? She says, no, you may only call me Mrs. Darcy when you are completely and perfectly and incandescently happy. And he starts calling her Mrs. Darcy and kissing her repeatedly while saying it. Another iconic scene. And that's the end.
Ah, cute.
Yay.
It's a really cute end.
Such a wholesome movie, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Well, this was a long time coming. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. It was super fun to cover this one. And honestly, I think it is in my repertoire now. I think I do need to watch it annually. It's such good fall vibes.
Yeah, it's in the fall rotation. So we have one more fun fall classic for you guys next week for Thanksgiving. If you guys are traveling between now and then, I hope you have safe travels.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye!